Hey, welcome to the 9 to 5 podcast. I am Josh, and with me is my co-host Elliot. Hey Elliot, how you doing today?
Pretty good, Josh. How about you?
I'm not too bad. Not too bad. Today we're going to talk about frugality versus cheap. And we live in a world where upgrading to the latest phone, driving a nice new shiny car, having the most expensive cell phone plan is really the norm. But what if you don't do those things?
That's unthinkable, Josh. I mean, if you don't have the latest iPhone or the new Pixel, I mean, who are you? I don't want to talk to you, right?
You talking to me?
Yeah. Or maybe to put something more in your terms instead of the shiny new cell phone, I better have the latest and greatest truck, right? I mean
Oh
that
yeah.
that screams Josh Epley if I know you well.
Yeah, my brand new shiny full size 2025. I gotta have it. Next year I'll get a 2026. We're joking here, of course, but yeah. So what is frugality and what is being cheap? I think those are the questions we're gonna answer here and ask each other. We can even maybe touch on what does it mean to be spendy because I hear that word kind of being tossed around from time to time as well, and we can touch on that.
Yeah. So I mean, I think really we want to make sure that we get good definitions of what is frugal, what is frugality, and what is cheap. And is it okay to be frugal? Is it okay to be cheap? And what I think we're going to both come out saying is we both believe that it's totally okay to be frugal, but when it starts to dip into being cheap, that's where I think we have a problem.
And I'll be a little bit contradictory there with you, Elliot. I think there is a time to be cheap, and we can certainly dig into some of those examples over the course of our conversation here. But I'll go ahead and kick things off with what I think it's somewhat subjective in what frugality versus cheap means to different individuals. For me, frugality means that I like to be intentional with my purchases and try to be efficient and sustainable in the best way that I can. So when we look at an example like we talked about a car or a phone, if my item is still working well, it's still efficient, it's not giving me problems, it's not an eyesore perhaps, or it's not giving some kind of negative feeling to me or to others, it's okay to continue to use that item. And cheap is where you're just trying to continue to squeeze out as much from something, even though it might be giving you or somebody else a problem. So if it's a car as an example and it's continuously breaking down and you're just trying to put it back together with band-aids and and duct tape, well, that might be cheap, especially if you're responsible for driving around your kids or picking up your spouse from work or whatever the case might be and you're running late for it. What do you think about those definitions?
I mean, duct tape fixes everything, Josh. I don't know what you're talking about. But yes, I think where I would start to define being frugal, like you said, being efficient, I consider myself somebody that tries to care about the environment, so trying to be efficient as far as its impact to whether it's the climate, the earth, just being a bit of an anti consumerist in those ways of just being efficient and making those intentional choices, trying to ensure that the things that I purchase, I use them uh, in the ways that they're meant to be used to the fullest extent that I can. Where I think cheapness becomes detrimental is really when the impact is to somebody external to myself. And so, like you said, if it started to impact my children, if I'm driving, let's say, a vehicle that isn't safe and I'm driving my three kids around, then hey, maybe that's crossing the threshold of frugal to cheapness. And like you did allude to, I think there is a time and a place for being cheap as well. And if you actually can't handle the transaction from a financial point of view, then maybe there is a time and a need to be cheap, and that's understandable. But if you're somebody that's in a financial place like you or I are at this point in our lives, then making cheap decisions, I think, would be considered detrimental. So I'll kick it back to you. What's the line?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's going to be different for everyone. And I remember just thinking about the cheap example for a moment and going back to the car example. When going back to my origin story, we talked about how I came into learning about FI when we were just coming out of, I went through bankruptcy, divorce, and all of those things and had a ton of debt and was really just trying to learn how to better manage my money. And when my wife and I first got together, we have 4 kids between us, and we were at a point where we had to have 2 cars because we were both going to work, and one of us needed to drop the kids off in the morning, one of us needed to pick them up. But we made a choice to get a very junky car. We had a nice family car at the time, SUV that was large enough for the 6 of us, and then we had a revolving door of older cars that were at the time I was buying them for like $300 to $600 a piece, and I would keep them for a few years, do some maintenance on them, and keep them running. But they were usually ugly. I remember one of them had really, really badly faded paint on one side, and the kids were kind of embarrassed to be picked up in these cars. And I certainly could have afforded a better car at the time, but we were in a situation where we were really trying to make some significant changes and strides towards more financial independence or just freedom, and having not having a second car payment and ultimately not having a car payment at all was the decision that we made so that we chose to be cheap for a period of time. And like you said, I wouldn't necessarily make that same decision with my current financial situation. But at the time, I could have afforded a more expensive car, maybe one that wouldn't have looked as ugly. But I made the choice that I can buy this thing that is cheap now, knowing that I'm only going to have it for a brief period of time, and that I'm going to either trade up or get something similar that's going to last me a couple of years. So I know it was cheap at the time, but it worked for our circumstances.
Sure. And I think what you're really highlighting there is really the intentionality behind your choice, right? Is you made that decision that you were going to buy that $300 to $600 car and make it work for your situation, knowing that it had a duration in your decision point. I'll give a few examples from my own life. Dawn and I had a period in time where we went down to a single car. That was an intentional choice for us to try and supercharge our savings. And sure, was it the most convenient thing in the world? Absolutely not. Like, she would drive me to work, drop me off at work, and then, pick me up at the end of the day. And I don't even recall if my coworkers knew of that at the time. They probably did. But I'm sure I came across looking cheap, but I knew that there was a reason that I was doing that. And its impact to us overall was fairly minimal. So,
So did you ever get any questions like, "What's going on, Elliot? Is your car always in the shop?"
if I did, I certainly don't remember them. I mean, I'm certainly a talker, so it wouldn't have surprised me if I would have specifically talked about only having one vehicle at that time. So,
Yeah, cars is something I feel like I could talk about for hours, and we have 3 future episodes on our to-do list that I want to get into. And this isn't going to be a podcast about cars, but there's a lot that we can talk about there, and I look forward to spending more time on that. But let's change gears a little bit and start talking about phone plans. Another example, another hot item that I think people always feel that they need to have the latest and greatest. What's your current phone, Elliot?
sure.
What version are
Man,
you
I
on?
yeah, I'm on a Pixel 6, I think is the version that I'm on, and I'm pretty sure I just got some email trying to get me to upgrade to the Pixel 10, and I could not tell you anything about it, quite frankly. I mean, I'm sure it's got a better camera, more megapixels, whatever, but, quite honestly, it's diminishing returns at a certain point. And there was a time in my life where I was that guy that needed to have the latest and greatest electronic gadget. But honestly, it doesn't change my life. And so I've lost that habit over the years, and my life is exactly the same. I I don't think too many people that have the latest and greatest gadget are using that device to its fullest extent of, okay, if I went and bought this phone for, this great camera, am I out shooting 100 photos a day or 10 photos a day even? I doubt it. And if I am, maybe there is the justification for that, but I personally am not. How about you?
You ever feel like you're in the minority that you're a Android user?
The faded blue dot as opposed to green dot. Yes, I have received that comment before. The idea of the lesser than, because I am not an Apple fanboy in that regard. Now, I've talked about it in the past. I have been an iPhone user, and not to throw any shade Apple's way or anybody that enjoys Apple products. They're great products, but I think in a lot of ways you're paying for the brand less the actual capability.
Yeah, well, I'm an Android user as well, Elliot, and I feel like there's fewer and fewer of us. But from a Fi scorecard position, I think I have you beat because I still have a Pixel 5, and I think it's a 5A, so it might be a little bit newer than a 5, but older than your 6. And I only say that because if in our world, I think there is still some folks that probably keep some sort of like mental score about how long they're able to use those items. So I feel a little proud that I have had my phone for 5 years now because like you said, the 10 just came out and I shared with you, and I don't mean any judgment by this whatsoever, but a couple of my buddies were talking about getting their latest 10 as it came out and all the accessories that were going along with it. And I asked one of my friends what is better about that phone than the one that he had versus the one that I have. So it was three different models over the last 5 years. And like you said, better camera. Now he did show me the camera, and it was phenomenal because it had 100 times zoom, and then AI would clean it up and it would be like not pixelated at all. So that was super cool. But like you said, I'm generally not going to need to zoom in 100 times for most items. And my phone does all the things that I need it to do. I listen to podcasts, listen to music, take pictures, take video. I record a lot of the videos for my YouTube channel with my phone that is 5 years old. And it certainly has paid for itself over and over again. And it works totally fine. It's not glitching. It's not doing anything. I'm sure at some point, though, there's going to be a hardware push or software push that's going to kill it. But right now, it keeps working. And then whenever it doesn't, I can't imagine I'm going to buy the latest. I'll probably upgrade to a version that's just a couple of years old.
Yeah, well, we'll have our race to the bottom. I was also a 5A user, I'm pretty sure, and I think the final nail in my coffin is I got one of the faded black screens that those pixels were prone to have, and I believe I got a new phone, compliments of Google. So,
Oh, nice.
you know, the true Fi way of, let's see if I can kick this can another 3 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But
So I guess that begs the question is that if you're trying to use it, if in that situation you were trying to use it while it had some sort of a glitch, that's probably on the borderline of being cheap, right?
yeah, I would say whether it would have a glitch, or I've seen people with cracked screens continue to use your phone. Maybe that's where I think I would draw the line of being frugal versus cheap. Maybe if it's a crack at the top right of your screen that doesn't impact it at all, sure. Maybe you can say, I'm still being frugal and that doesn't affect me. But if, there's a nice shadow right through the center of your screen and it's impacting your ability to actually functionally use the phone, I think you have slid into the cheap end of the spectrum.
I agree with you. So with the phone, there comes the phone plan. And what kind of phone plan do you use? And are you on a budget plan or do you pay hundreds of dollars a month for your phone service?
Clearly hundreds of dollars for my phone service. I mean, AT&T unlimited plan for not only my five family members but my parents, my brother and his family. Now, as you can tell, I am joking. I also have gone the ways of a budget plan over time. So I am a user of Mint Mobile, and prior to that I was on Google Fi before that. So I've been on the land of the budget phone plan for a while now. How about yourself?
Well, I'm currently on Google Fi and I've been considering switching to Mint Mobile for months now. And I didn't even know you were on it. So that's something that we need to talk about a little bit more, what your experience has been. But I know that that is approximately $25 a month, if I'm not mistaken.
So I think we have maybe one user that pays 20 and the rest are at like 15,
Okay.
or they're all at 15. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think even today we get like it's either 3 or 5 gigs of data for free included in that $15 cost. And so yeah, I mean, compared to even, I think, Google Fi at the time, it was like you paid 10 for every gig of data, at least back in the day when I was on Google Fi. So I'm not sure if they've changed their service, but if you need that promo code, I'll hook you up with that referral.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been meaning to make the switch. I currently have unlimited data on the Google Fi plan, but it is a hard, I think $40 a month per person. So between Lori and I, we pay $80 total, which I know I can do better than that. And I got to that point because we had used services in the past that were 1 gig max, and then it either would shut off or you would pay extra. I
Mm-hmm.
can't even remember I think Republic Wireless was one of them. And then that got sold and they changed the rules. So we eventually moved to Google Fi, but it was getting harder and harder to stay within that 1 gig per month per person. And the unlimited just seemed like it was inevitable. But I would assume that I think with Mint Mobile, if you're up to five, or I think some of those plans now are unlimited and they're still way
Yeah, they
cheaper
have
than Google
unlimited.
Fi.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
I need
have
to give that a
unlimited
shot.
that I don't remember the exact price point, but yeah, I think I'm sure it's at least competitive. Ryan Reynolds has to fund Wrexham FC somehow, right?
That's right. Go Red Dragons.
So let's pivot here a little bit. I know we talked about cars a little bit, but cars really are one of the biggest status symbols. So why does it feel weird to drive an older, reliable car instead of constantly upgrading?
Yeah, it doesn't feel weird to me anymore. It did to me back in my younger days when I thought I was chasing the American dream and needed to have something new that symbolized or showed to the outside world that, hey, I'm successful, I'm doing well. And that has definitely changed over time. So my current vehicle is a 2012 small Chevy Colorado pickup truck. And I was really intentional with that purchase because it gets good gas mileage. It is reliable, although I do have a story about that in just a moment. And I use it for all kinds of hauling and just moving things. I've had the truck for 8 or 9 years now, and it's served me pretty well. But I feel like that unfortunately there is still that stigma that people want to have, and we're just bombarded with it through commercials and marketing and advertising, that it's going to make you such a better person if you have this fancy car, and it's only going to cost you 700 to $1,000 a month.
Yeah, yeah,
You can afford
precisely.
it.
Clearly, everybody can afford it. Yeah, it's crazy how well the marketing truly works, and it shows the power of advertising. I was a big Mad Men fan, and it's just crazy the effects that advertising really has on us just in general. But I saw a quote that I think lends itself very well to this whole conversation. This was on Substack, on Morgan Housel's Substack the other day. Was from, I think he cited Jimmy Carr. He said, "In your 20s, you care about what everyone thinks of you. In your 30s, you say, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. And then in your 40s, you realize they weren't thinking about you the whole time."
Yeah, very
And I
true.
think that lends itself very well. It rang true to me. I currently in my 30s, and I'm embodying exactly what Jimmy Carr is saying in your 30s. Is I don't really care what people think about me, and my choice in vehicles is evident of that. There was a time, like I mentioned before, where I was driving one car. I had bought a used car from one of my coworkers, which we jokingly called the roller skate because it was a little Hyundai Accent. It was just tiny, but it did the job. It got me from point A to point B, and now I do drive a Tesla Model 3. Maybe you're saying, "Oh, nonsense." You're right back into thinking what people think of you.
You care.
You care clearly. But what I would say to that is the reason that I made the choice of the Model 3 was that I was going to be driving a long distance to my employer, and stepping into the electric market made sense for me. And at the time, based off the products that were out there and the costs, I thought the Model 3 was the best product on the market. How about you?
I have a frugal versus cheap question for you here. So I
Sure.
alluded, my truck is generally reliable. I have had some mechanical issues with it off and on over the years. All cars do have some kind of an issue from time to time. A real world example, I'm getting ready to take a road trip a week from today, 11 hours north to visit my son in Michigan. And within the last couple of days, I've started to notice a smell of coolant, antifreeze. So it's leaking from within my truck somewhere. And I've searched all around trying to find the leak. I've seen the actual reservoir has dropped some as well. And I'm now getting a little bit concerned about the taking it on this long road trip. But inside, I'm saying, I'm having a debate with myself. And I'm thinking, do I take it to the shop, make an appointment, go through all that, or what I'm actually probably going to do is after we end this conversation today, I'm going to pull it into the garage and I'm going to start tearing into it and try to figure out where is that leak coming from and spend who knows how much time doing that. Hopefully it's something easy, but maybe, I guess best case scenario, I realize what it is and I can either fix it myself or have someone else fix it. Do you think I'm being frugal or cheap in that situation, especially given that I'm going to need it a week from today?
Sure. I think you're being frugal, quite frankly, because you had the skills and the time to do it, right? Is you have a problem, you're intentionally trying to solve that problem yourself first. Obviously, I know your financial state, and so you can afford the repair. Like, that's not a problem. But I think you're giving yourself the opportunity to build a new skill or leverage existing skills and try and solve the problem yourself first. Maybe the one question I would ask is, if you go attempt the repair yourself first, does that exclude you from being able to go to the repair shop if needed and get the repair done in time for your trip?
It's a very good question, and it's one I've asked myself too because I have a limited amount of free time available between now and then. So you mentioned that I have the time, and while that's true, I have a couple of days that are pretty busy between now and then. And the window, and then of course we're coming up on a weekend, and I only have like maybe one day next week that is available. So I could be potentially wasting valuable time in reaching out to a shop and saying, "Can you get me in on Monday to have a look at this?" Instead, I'm going to be trying to do the work myself, and then the end of today comes and I can't find anybody to look at it next week. So it's a debate. It's a tough one.
So I would say, what is the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
Is let's say you go through and you start doing the repair and you can't find it. You got to put it back together. You reach out to a shop. They can't fit you in. Then what? What are you going to do?
I take the drive and take the risk, or if I'm seriously concerned about it, then I maybe have to cancel the trip, which would be disappointing.
So if you were on the trip and something similar to this happened to my parents and I on a family vacation, if you are driving along on your trip, this causes you stop for dinner somewhere and then you come back out, your car won't start. Then what? What are you going to do if it breaks down on your journey to go see your son?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess I'm stuck using Google to try to find somebody that I can call for a tow to get it to the nearest shop and have it looked at, which could create all kinds of other problems, not from a financial standpoint, but just from a wasted time standpoint.
So because I alluded to it, I'll at least tell you the quick story. So my mom had a conference in New Orleans. So we were all going to join her, and the rest of the family was going to vacation while she worked, and then she would obviously join by night. So we made it down to Sikeston, Missouri. Are you familiar with the Lamberts?
Yeah, that they're old rolls.
Yeah, home of the throwed rolls. So we had to stop for some throwed rolls. We came back out, and our car wouldn't start, and
Oof.
smelled of sulfur. And so, sure enough, we did something very similar to what you just talked about. We actually got towed all the way back to St. Louis and then jumped in a rental car and hightailed it
Made
all
the
the way
trip.
down to New Orleans the next day.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess that's an option. I didn't even think about that. If I'm running the risk of not getting it fixed and it's a big enough concern, I could just rent a car and make the trip.
That's right.
Yeah. Glad we talked through this. We
There you
need to get
go.
back. Okay, Elliot, so we've talked a lot about frugality and how we think about it, but why do you feel like we need to justify it to our friends and family or our coworkers?
Yeah, that's a good question, Josh. I think we want to put on this show that we're successful, right? I think that's just ingrained in American culture and just culture in general is we want to exude that our decisions that we have made have led to positive outcomes. And so the best way that people know how to do this is to show externally, hey, I've got this car, it shows that I'm successful, or I'm wearing these clothes that show that I'm wealthy, or I have the financial status to be able to acquire these clothes. So, in our previous episodes, we talked about how there is no way to have a badge that says, hey, I've saved my money in my Roth IRA this year, or something to show, like, yes, I'm saving for my freedom. I'm doing something that I perceive as worthwhile with my money. And so, to most of the world, I would say the way that we signal that we are doing well from a fiscal perspective is by the goods and services that we consume. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think I still struggle with that just a tiny bit, even though we can say that we're like going back to your previous point about being in your 30s and then on into your 40s about people don't care, they're not looking at you anyway, they're not paying attention to what you're doing. There is a side of me that thinks that, hey, I'm the guy that retired early, much earlier than my friends, coworkers, and family, and I have an old truck, and I live in a fairly modest, pretty small house in comparison to a lot of people, including my neighbors. It's one of the smallest houses in the subdivision. So there's part of me that looks at it from the perspective of, oh, well, he just got there because he's cheap.
Clearly.
And and I do still struggle with that just a little bit. And I never really have felt the need to tell people that, yeah, but I'm saving for my freedom, or I have contributed the max to my 401k or IRA, like you said. But it is something that has been in the back of my mind at times that when I have gotten comments about my truck from a few people, like, how long are you going to drive that thing? Or, boy, when are you going to get a full size truck? Things like that. I've actually gotten those comments quite a few times. And I know that people are just joking, but I've never really fought back with trying to justify it, but I can see that that's something that people would definitely struggle with because even though you might be pressured by the advertising and marketing and keeping up with the Joneses, there's still that real push from just the people you're even closest to that are trying to encourage you to spend money that you don't want to spend unnecessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, behind every joke, there is some twinge of truth, right? That's what makes it really ring true or sting a little bit, whatever. And so maybe along with that, I would say, do you feel embarrassed or proud when you make a frugal choice in front of your friends or family?
I like to think of it as a superpower for in most cases. Now, like the phone is a really good one where I see that other people are continuously upgrading. I'm like, I'm still getting the use out of this one. So it's kind of a superpower. I know that it has served me well. And I can literally look around my office here and look at all the items that I know that were either secondhand or I'm getting the most use out of. The laptop I'm talking to you on is 8 years old and still works totally fine. And I haven't needed to upgrade that. I build a lot of my own furniture, which is maybe a completely different topic, but is along the lines of frugality and quality. My lamp that is in front of me is secondhand and we painted it. So I feel like it's a superpower that I like to take advantage of. So I don't generally feel embarrassed. I usually feel pretty proud.
That's great.
How
So, your example of talking about having a twinge of, I don't know what the right word is, whether it is regret or just feeling like, are they right?
mm-hmm.
They're saying Josh retired because he lives in a smaller house and he drives an older car. And I would say, in most cases, I would echo your same sentiment that I'm being intentional with a lot of the choices that I made in order to live a life that they can't in that timeline, right? And not that they can't ever, but can't on the same timeline that obviously I did because of the choices that I've made. But yeah, there are certainly times where I feel maybe less than because I didn't go get the super big house or go on that super exotic vacation or drive the fanciest car, things of that nature. I'm a human being beholden to all of the same things that everyone else is as far as keeping up with the Joneses. It's just trying to keep those feelings at bay at times and realizing there is a reason why I've made the intentional choices that I've made. So let's kind of summarize a few of the things that we've talked about. Some simple ways that you can save money is not upgrading to the latest phone, having a different phone plan. We've talked about the mind shift of not upgrading your cars as frequently, the benefits of living in a house that is more fit for your immediate needs than having to upgrade. These are some of the biggest expenses, right? If we talk about the largest expenses in anyone's budget, it's usually cited as the big three. It's your house, it's your car, and it's your food. And optimizing in some of those ways really allows you to make some great strides because of those intentional choices.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think maybe one area that we didn't touch on too much as we were talking about this stuff is that spendy category. And as you mentioned, food, that's probably one where you and I would agree that that's an area we might spend a little bit more in than the others, and we're less intentional with being frugal or cheap in that area. I know for myself, I'm trying to be as healthy as I possibly can be. So we don't worry about the cost of groceries. We buy what we need and what we want. Try to be intentional from the aspect of not wasting. And I should say we don't go to the more expensive grocery stores, but we do try to eat healthy food. We don't eat a lot of fast food. When we go to restaurants, we don't worry too much about what the cost is for the food, and that's generally because we look at that as more of an experience. It's a form of entertainment, and it's an opportunity for us to spend time with the people that we care about. So we're definitely more spendy in that category, but the other two of the top three, we really focus on keeping that as low as we possibly can.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Is food is certainly a large budget item for us. I would say that we give ourselves a little grace in this category just in the stage of life that Dawn and I are in right now. Given that we have three little kids, I'm preaching to the choir here, Josh, with having small kids. Like sometimes, whether it's going to various extracurriculars or just entertaining everybody, getting food on the table sometimes is just that is the requirement. And so we still do hit fast food every once in a while or get takeout if we're exhausted by the end of the day. Now, that may not be the most intentional thing, but we're trying to say that's okay in this stage of life. And like you said, we're viewing that as an experience and it's meeting a requirement at this time.
And like you said, it sounds like you're being very intentional about that choice. You're not just doing it out of, let's say, laziness or convenience. I guess it is convenience from that aspect, but it's intentional convenience. You're looking at it and saying, we don't have necessarily the opportunity to cook a meal and clean up and do all the things and get the kids ready to get them out the door to get to the thing. We want to make sure that people eat. And these are the days that we're going to be in that situation. So we have to try to be more efficient with our time. So I think that's okay. I think that's good. Well, I shouldn't say that's okay because who are we to judge?
Well, Josh, I didn't know that I was talking to a marketer here. I think you can go sell that trademark of intentional convenience as opposed to laziness. I'll make sure that I include that in my vernacular now is I'm being intentionally convenient. So
And let Don know that I said it's okay.
that's right. Absolutely. So you want to bring us home here?
Yeah, and before we wrap up, I think there's just a couple of things that I wanted to touch on that were challenges in my past when it came to being cheap versus frugal. One of them that my wife and I still talk about, well, I should say she talks about, she brings up frequently, is the thermostat. Over a period of time, going back to the early days and probably reading some Mr. Money Mustache and trying to be as efficient as possible, I remember that I was trying to avoid turning on the air conditioner and avoid turning on the furnace. And there were days whenever our house would heat up to 80 plus degrees in the summertime and people are sweating and uncomfortable. And I'm like, just wear less clothes and sit in front of a fan. And in the wintertime, it was the opposite. It was, okay, let's bundle up and let's try to sit close together on the couch so that we use each other's body temperature. I mean, I was literally doing these things until finally Lori got to the point and she's like, what are you doing? This is stupid. I'm not going to be uncomfortable in my own home. We're going to stop this. And I think she went over and adjusted the thermostat. And I was like, okay, I'm being cheap. That was a fail. And another area that we still kind of debate on a little bit is I hate wasting anything, especially food, but I am known as the guy who just keeps squeezing every last drop out of something, whether it's toothpaste or shampoo, whatever. And that will drive her nuts as well. So I've tried to like let that go, but that's a hard one. And I'm probably being cheap because that last little bit that I'm expecting her to squeeze out of the toothpaste is worth about 2 cents.
Yeah,
But
pennies. I would agree with you 100% there is I think it's really how we were raised, right? I guarantee both from our upbringings is that thought of being wasteful with food, like that one rings so true to me. I can still remember my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. We were down at Trout Lodge. It was an all you can eat buffet, and my eyes were probably, like I've got everything here. And I brought way too much food back, and it was jarring to my parents that it's like, eat what's on your plate. You can always go back. So to this day, that message replays in my mind is you finish what's on your plate, and that's a completely different topic. I know for Dawn, she is very anti finish what's on your plate. It's eat to when you're full and then stop. But the for wring out the toothpaste, we have gone even to the extreme of I've seen people cut off the ends of lotion bottles and,
yep.
get what's left in the bottom of a lotion bottle. Yeah, that's probably cheap, not frugal. But I mean, to each their own. Like if you're okay with it's not hurting anybody, if you're both on the same page of, yeah, we're being cheap, but we're okay with it, who are we to judge?
This has been a good conversation, Elliot.
I agree.
All right, so our listeners, if you found value in today's episode and you have any thoughts on frugality, if we missed anything, if you'd like to leave us some feedback, please do so on our YouTube video or give us a comment in your podcast player of choice. And don't forget to give us a rating, especially on Spotify. Those are coming in now. It's really cool to see those 5-star ratings. So, any last words there, Elliot?
I don't think so. Thanks for making time in your day to tune in and listen to us two average Joes talk about frugality and cheapness. But we've really enjoyed it, and we hope that you have as well.